Okay, so we're starting 5.9 today, which is actually the computation of slope of a non-vertical line. So the last lesson we went over was 5.8, and that was finding the slope based on the graph. And so we're going to start off where we left off, last lesson. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to review how did we find the slope from a graph right here, and then you're going to have a chance to kind of try on your own on the problem that's right next to it. So for this first problem, I'm looking at the graph, and remember we want to identify some points on the graph. So the first one I see is right here, and then the second point I see is actually right here, right there. And I'm going to count in the up, down, left, and right directions to see how can I actually travel from the first point to the second point. So I see I can move up 1, 2, 3 units, and I can move to the right 1 unit. And so I know my slope for this graph is 3/1. Remember, our slope is the ratio in how often we move up to how often we move to the right. Okay, so what I want you to do now is pause the video, go to this graph that's right next to us, and try to figure out if you can find the slope for that graph as well. Okay, hopefully you're back from finding the slope, and I hope that you found 2 clear points on your graph, and you saw that we moved up twice and we moved over once, and so that our slope is 2/1, or just 2. Okay, so we're going to continue looking at slope today on the graph and off of the graph and see is there some way that we can calculate the slope maybe without having to count it on the graph. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at some points here. So there are a lot of points on this graph. Let me make sure I can put the whole graph there. And I want to look at all the points that are there. So we have one there, we have one there, we have one there, we have one there, and we have one there. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to select a couple of these points and we're going to find the slope. So I'm going to select them for you. I'm going to ask that you pause the video and try to determine the slope, and then we'll check something else. So first points I want you to use are, I want you to use this point and this point to find the slope. So go ahead, pause your video, find your slope, write it down. So I hope that you've done that, and if you did, I hope that you found that we go up twice and we go over 3 times. So the slope for these 2 points is 2/3, which I'm going to write over here. And let me go ahead and make that a little bit more clear. 2/3. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to do the same thing for 2 different points. So what if I told you to find the slope between this one and this one? Go ahead, take a moment and find your slope between those 2 values. Okay, so hopefully you found the slope and you realized, oh, we move up 4 times and we move over 6 times. And so that gives us a slope of 4/6. Okay, we're going to do this one more time. What if I want you to find the slope between, let's go from this point again all the way to this point here. How can we count that? Okay, so pause the video, find your slope. So just for the sake of messiness, I decided to kind of go the bottom route first. That way I don't have arrows on arrows. And what I find is that we go to the right 9 times and we go up 6 times. So I get 6/9 for that slope. Okay, so we got 3 different slopes here, but if we take a closer look, if we just simplify all of these slopes, then we actually find that these are actually all 2/3 still. There's no difference there. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to write down the points that we use to find these slopes and see if maybe there's some other connection between the numbers in the points and the slope that we get, and see if we can make a connection there. Okay, so for our yellow points, we used -1, -1. So I'm going to write -1, -1. And we use 2, 1. For our green points, we use 2, 1. And and we used 8 and 5. Okay, and for our peak points we used 2, 1, and we used 11 and 7. Okay, so these are the points we're looking at right now. So I want you to take a moment and I want you to ask yourself, is there some connection between these numbers and the slope? Is there some connection between these numbers and the slope 4 over 6? Is there some connection between these two numbers and the slope 6 over 9?